Well, humanitarian aid is drying up in Somalia. 5.9 million people are at risk of losing access to life-saving assistance. That has prompted the government to issue an appeal for funding to international donors and other well-wishers. In a statement, the government of Somalia says it is concerned by the humanitarian crisis. Nearly half the population of Somalia, including children and women, face hunger. Drought and floods in the country have recently increased, a situation worsened by climate change, COVID-19, and the worst desert locust infestation in years. Well, for more on that, we're now joined by PRAVIN NGALA, Interim Regional Director for the Horn, East and Central Africa at OXFAM International, and joins us from Johannesburg. Thank you so much for joining us, PRAVIN. What is the status of famine and hunger in Africa, and what are the major causes?
Thank you so much for having me. Indeed, the situation is dire on the continent. In our report, in Oxfam's report last year, we indicated that hunger would actually be more dire than COVID-19 in terms of impact. And what we've seen globally is that 20 million people have been pushed to extreme hunger levels in over 155 million, on 55 countries of 155 million people. On the continent, we do have several hotspots that we are monitoring. For example, Ethiopia, DRC, South Sudan, and the Sahel, where on average we have we're monitoring the hunger levels as having increased by approximately 45%. What are the causes, really, you ask? I think we've put them, we're calling them the three triple lethal Cs: climate, COVID, and conflict. Climate is on top of COVID-19 on account of the fact that it's driving a lot of some of the issues which become exacerbated by COVID-19. And also the fact that many of our governments have prioritized responding to COVID as opposed to the climate crisis. There's been an increase in climate-related damage. And for the continent, as you mentioned earlier, that for instance, in East Africa, after we had the cyclones, we had desert locusts that really, impacted many farmers by eating up a lot of crop. Millions of hectares of crop were damaged. So that for us is one of the areas we feel is driving the hunger situation on the continent. The other bit is on COVID. COVID-19 has indeed for us exacerbated the economic fallout on the continent. Part of this is attributed to the business closures, the lockdowns, the measures being taken to circumvent the spread of COVID-19. And what we've seen is that it's resulted in an increase of approximately 16% increase in poverty. And with it, especially certain groups, women, people living in informal settlements, the urban poor, especially those working in small and medium enterprises. So that's another bit. The other one is actually on conflict. We've been listening today to several issues, several concerns around conflict. Last year, on the background of COVID-19 pandemic, the UN called for a ceasefire globally, but we have noticed indeed that unfortunately the conflicts have continued unabated. In the region, there's various countries that we are monitoring. We've got Ethiopia, we've got DRC, we've got South Sudan, we've got the Sahel. So there's various areas where conflict in itself becomes a driver of the hunger crisis. As an example, for instance, in Ethiopia, according to the recent IPC analysis, 350,000 people are at risk of facing famine-like conditions because of the fact that they're unable to access their farmland and indeed farm.
Thank you so much for all that, PRAVIN NGALA, Regional Director, the Horn, East and Central Africa at OXFAM International.